look, you told me a few months ago on this program that you thought it was entirely likely that the Taliban would be taking over the country. But President Biden, just last month, quote, the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. He was wrong.
Jake, what we've done, what the president has done, is make sure that we were able to adjust to anything happening on the ground.
Are you confident in the security of American personnel at the embassy, even as the Taliban encircle Kabul?
That is job one for me, John. We're working to make sure that our personnel are safe and secure. We're relocating the men and women of our embassy to a location at the airport.
Virtually every democracy in the world is dealing with challenges right now, including the United States. We're up against deep inequities, systemic racism.
Well, there you go. And usually it would be funny to know it, but these idiots, these woke, moronic idiots, Blinken, Milley, and the Austin, the Secretary of Defense, all of these people have put us in a position here where they have been blinded by ideology that's more about social change than existential things happening on the ground in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, right now, as we speak, for us it's Sunday afternoon, the situation's falling apart in Afghanistan. We were told that just some days ago that even though the Taliban was racing across Afghanistan, that it'll be 30, 60, 90 days, 60 days, we'll see.
And that was it wasn't even supposed to be that. That was the leaked information that it was shocking that the country could fall within 30 to 90 days.
Well, the country fell today. So the president of Afghanistan, wherever he is, he took a cab to a plane and got out of town.
Tajikistan or something.
The U.S. Embassy has been taken over. The Taliban flag is now, the United Emirates of Taliban flag is up there. And the U.S., you've got Americans trapped in
Kabul,
thank you. And there are Americans at the airport. The flights have stopped from the airport. Evacuation flights are going out from the airport. The airport apparently is getting rocketed as well. Mm-hmm. You could see there was a whole bunch of smoke near the embassy, which is customary embassy thing to do in war when you're evacuating because you're burning all documents. But it is a disaster is unfolding in Afghanistan, and unfortunately I hate to say it, but there's no joy in this administration to see, they're morons and they're incompetents and they're ideologues and out of touch, etc. Because they are, and that's fine, and they're stupid and whatever, etc. That's fine. But this sucks. What's happening now? This stinks because not only my worry 3 days ago was that we were abandoning interpreters.
Right.
My worry now is that we've left behind Americans. Mm-hmm. And what could unfold, Alice, the nightmare situation, we could be watching Americans be savaged on video very shortly.
Right, in a matter of hours, potentially.
Yes, and it could be in the tens, could be in the hundreds, could be even more. Who knows? Who knows how the military is doing?
And as of right now, Sunday afternoon, the president still hasn't spoken publicly about what's going on. They released a statement earlier saying that, this was Trump's fault because this was his deal to end the war in Afghanistan and that they had to stick with it. And
right. All you've got today is you get the Secretary of State out there telling people, that things are going to be... That this was as intention, that this was essentially a victory. He said, you have to put it all in context. He actually said, all in context. So this is the Secretary of State. The embassy has been overrun.
Right.
Okay? So there's no cleanup time in the morning shows. We are so clueless as to what these guys are doing that it's miraculous. It's remarkable that they couldn't get the messaging to Blinken in time for him to go lie on Jake Tapper to realize that while he's talking, we're flying out of the embassies and burning documents. It is crazy.
Right. And so now the White House account just tweeted about a half an hour ago, around 2:30 p.m. Eastern time. This morning, the president and vice president met with their national security team and senior officials to hear updates on the drawdown of our civilian personnel in Afghanistan. The drawdown, honey. That's what's happening in Kabul right now. It's a drawdown of our personnel. Evacuations of SIV applicants and other Afghan allies and the ongoing security situation in Kabul.
the drawdown, and of course,
and there's a picture of Biden sitting by himself at Camp David, looking very thoughtful at the screen. And this is a picture because they have like the clocks up above the screen in the Camp David room. It's from 11:30 this morning. So no proof of life on the president since 11:30 this morning. Basically, is what they're telling us.
Right, during the drawdown, or as the press,
drawdown,
or as the press has been calling it, because one of these Taliban leaders called it, which was tongue in cheek, the peaceful transfer of power. Another thing that's been mainstream because the Taliban said it, and so whenever, all right, those of you who have been listening
your poison
to
ivy?
me, it's not experiencing a drawdown right now, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
Since I've been covering, since I've been on radio, I've been familiar with Michael Yon. When he was a young correspondent in Iraq in 2004, and me and a show called the Pundit Review Show had him on, and he would have to get on a satellite phone, etc. He would always embed with American troops and follow these guys all around, and he was in firefights, and he was the best guy on the ground to talk to. And then he went to Afghanistan. He spent years there. He was in Indochina. Guys, he like never went home. He goes and follows wars, and he's the best of the best. This guy is fantastic. Right now he's in Panama, covering some Western Hemisphere chaos, and he'll tell us all about that. But we got a hold of Michael Yon today, in between him getting messages, desperate messages, from trapped Americans in Kabul. And he gave us a few minutes of his time. This guy is the best of this. I'm telling you, this is well worth the listen. It's a little shocking at times, but certainly insightful. This is Michael Yon. All right, we are thrilled to talk to, this is the guy you want to talk to at a time like now. He is, I would say, probably the best war correspondent of this century so far. He's been covering certainly the war in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and all over the world. Never seems to stop. He is Michael Yon. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I'm in Panama right now. In fact, I just got in from the Darien Gap out in the jungle. And before that, Lithuania last week, and Morocco and Greece, all these border issues with people flooding across borders. And so obviously I'm very interested in Afghanistan. As you know, I've been concerned about this for many years. I left in 2011, actually, from Afghanistan when I realized it was going to go this direction and it wasn't worth risking my life for anymore. And so that's when I finally punched out and focused on other conflicts such as Thailand and elsewhere. But right now, with what's happening in Afghanistan, it was exactly as I've been publishing since 2006. So it's actually not surprising at all. Always the details are surprising because you never know what the details are going to be. But the end state was pretty clear because it was a policy issue. You know, we defeated the Taliban in the beginning, and it was a very quick defeat with special operations, Air Force, CIA, Navy. The whole party came together, and we really kicked them down the street. And then later, we went in with this nation-building idea, which is a complete disaster. You know, I've spent more than half of my life downrange outside of the United States. Not half of my adult life, but more than half of my life. I grew up in Florida, lived all over the United States, but I've also spent many years in places like Afghanistan and Iraq and India and Nepal and just long list, right? And so I realized instantly, going into Afghanistan, it's one of the most primitive places in the world. I like Afghans, actually. I mean, I communicate. I'm helping a family right now, actually. And in fact, some American citizens are trapped in Kabul right now that I'm helping. It's just unbelievable. But at the same time, we're not going to be able to turn Afghanistan around suddenly. It's not. It's a 100-year project minimum. People that come in like General McCaffrey would go, "Oh, it's going to take 15 years." I had a couple of lunches, private lunches, just Barry McCaffrey and I over in Virginia or Washington or wherever it was. It was a long time ago. And he said, it's going to take 15 years, Michael. And I was like, I think it's going to take like a century because we're not, 15 years is not going to work. And keep in mind, we were talking about this back in 2007 or something. So, I mean, it was, it was just obvious. I mean, like for instance, Nepal, where I spent a year. Nepal is, let's say, 60 to 70 years ahead of Afghanistan. It's still one of the poorest countries in the world. And I compare Nepal to Afghanistan. First, I've been in Nepal for a year and Afghanistan for 2 years, but their problem sets are quite similar. 80% of the people live outside of a few main cities. Almost everybody is illiterate. And well, not in Nepal anymore. And many people are literate in Nepal now. And many people in Nepal actually speak English or some other access language. But in Afghanistan, this is the way it was. Nepal opened up in the 1950s, right? Mm-hmm. So Nepal opened up in the 50s, and it's still one of the most backwards countries in the world. But it's 60 or 70 years ahead of Afghanistan, right? And Afghanistan is got the same problem set. Almost everybody is illiterate. The people who are literate are not highly literate, and they tend to be literate in languages like Pashto or Tajik or Uzbek, Hazar. They're not literate in language access languages like English or French or German, Russian, Chinese. They're not they don't speak access language, so they're just out there on their own planet basically. And literally these villages where 80% of them live, most of them have no paved roads. They don't have bridges. There's rivers everywhere, as you know. And when you come up to a river and there's a village on the other side of the river, 200 yards away, it might as well be 50 miles away. It might as well be on a different planet, because you can't, it's only a few hundred yards away, but in reality, it can take days to get there, going down or up the river to go across somewhere, right? And so these things that we take for granted, like when I grew up in the United States, I grew up in a place called Winter Haven, Florida. It's called the City of 100 Lakes because we have about 100 lakes. And we've got all these little bridges all over the place, right? Now, if I didn't I grew up in Florida when the bridges were already built, right? Mm-hmm. So I just took them for granted. But when I go back to Winter Haven, after I've been to all these countries around the world, I appreciate those little bridges. I realize somebody built those things. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that we're not a bunch of little villages is because somebody built bridges.
Well, Michael,
little bridges, just tiny little bridges.
You remind me of a friend. Alice went to school with a guy who served in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he said that I found poignant is that all the villagers who he met had never heard of Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah, because Afghanistan is our conception. And a lot of them thought that we were Russians. I get that all the time. Man. And what's funny is I would go out to little villages, and I spent 2 years. One of the years I was out rolling around alone without the British or Americans or Lithuanians. I was out just on my own, and I would go into villages, and kids would know how to moonwalk, right, like Michael Jackson, right? And we're talking about a village that's like 50 miles from the nearest electricity, right? And they would moonwalk. And at one point after Michael Jackson died, I was out in a little village, and I said, Michael Jackson has died. And I said that through my interpreter. Oh. And the Pashtun tribal leaders like, yes, we have heard that the Michael has died. Please tell your people that we cry a million Pashtun tears for the Michael. We shall miss the Michael. I'm like, how in the world? I was just kind of joking around. Yeah. How do they know about Michael Jackson, but they don't know that we're not Russians? You know what I mean? It's right. You know what I mean? It's that kind of weird thing,
You describe it perfectly, and it's fruitless to try to build a nation, and hasn't happened ever really. So, but here's the thing: so these people suddenly, over the last week, we were told we'd have 30 to 90 days. Over the last week, they've moved. They've taken over every province. They've taken over every big city. Now they're handed the capital. The president took a jet out of there today. And now they're coming in. We're begging them not to come into the airport. Give us a second, we're saying. Give us a second. First of all, are these guys aren't going to stop. And what happens when they tear into the capital city?
Right now, I'm looking at a photo that just came in from the airport. Literally, it came in 10 minutes ago. It says 10 minutes. And you see and actually, I had a friend who just flew over this morning. He just landed in India. And he said that, when he was flying over, there's traffic down there orbiting around in Afghanistan, not able to land. And some aircraft, like one, you could find it on Flight Radar 24, by the way. Go to Flight, and you'll see like aircraft that return to Dubai and that sort of thing without landing. The airport's unsafe. And I'm looking at a photo right now.
Right. The
you'll be
airport's
the
unsafe,
first
but
to see
that's
it.
where all of the
I don't know if
troops
you can see
are.
it.
Isn't that where?
But-
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So from what I've read too, now the airport's in the middle of the city, like in the middle of neighborhoods, and there are all kinds of people rushing there to try and get out. I mean, not just Americans, but all kinds of people that worked with Americans. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing estimates of tens of thousands, maybe 20,000 people that we ought to have a responsibility to get out of the country that we're not going to be able to now.
No, we closed down. You're exactly right, because we closed down our military capacity in advance. For instance, when we closed down Bagram, that's an airfield that could have supported this airfield. But now this is the only airfield we've got going. I mean, this is it. I mean, this is literally a run for the border, literally like Vietnam. And
Wow.
what comes next? Well, one of the things you got to keep in mind that the Afghan, or let's say Pashtun in this case, most of the Taliban are Pashtun, but some are Tajiks and others. And their cultural habit for war. Keep in mind, I study war all over the world. Cultures have war habits, just like cultures have eating habits, right? And one of the cultural habits for war with Pashtuns is they will pursue a fleeing enemy. If the enemy flees, they will pursue that enemy like a border collie goes after. You ever run near a border collie? Just stop. You know what I mean? And but as soon as you run from Pashtun, they're going to chase you. That's what they always do. They've done it for centuries. They did it to the British many times. They did it to Genghis Khan. They did it to the Russians, of course. That's just what they do. So right now we're running. They see it. They're going to pursue. It's a war reflex. They can negotiate all they want, but it's like trying to stop a border collie from chasing something that runs. It's gonna go for it. It always does.
This morning, one of the leaders of the Taliban told the BBC that we're going to have a peaceful transfer of power. Everybody can stay put. Seconds later, they had ordered people to maraud into the city. I mean, just even describing on your Twitter feed how they treat prisoners routinely. These animals are going to start killing people on video and torturing people. I mean, I'm thinking a nightmare scenario. Am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right. That's what they're already doing in Farah. For instance, Farah City, which is the capital of Farah province, which I've been there many times. Farah, they're beheading people now. In fact, just earlier this week, they told people to come in. I don't think what I'm telling you is in the news, actually. It came from a friend that was just out in Farah. They told people to come in. The Afghans who were working for the government before will give you ID cards. Everything's fine. You just surrender, say you did, and everything's fine. We're brothers, that sort of thing. And then they literally gave them IDs and then went to their homes that night and started beheading people. So I mean, that's this week. That's right now. This is ongoing. This is how they roll. Now there's other cultural habits that you'll find in various groups in Afghanistan, especially Pashtun, is they will surrender in mass. Now, keep in mind the ANA, the Afghan National Army, is mostly not Pashtun, right? Almost all of the Taliban is, not almost all, but the vast majority of Taliban is Pashtun, right? But in the Afghan National Army, the vast majority are not Pashtun, right? But Afghans as a group, Afghans, whether it's Hazars or whatever, they will tend to surrender in mass and flip sides. This is a normal thing for them to do. So reports that I saw this morning, I don't know if they're online, I don't know if they've been reported in the media, but that the Afghan National Army, big groups have surrendered in mass. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. But that is a cultural habit, just as much as the border collie chases things that run. They do surrender in mass. And they do tend to just flop sides. Like 1 minute we're fighting you, and you won. Okay, we're on your side now. That's how they roll.
Yeah.
So if you are telling us all this, and you say you saw this, back in 2007, 2011, a long time ago.
Six.
Yeah. And
6. Yep.
In 2006, said you were seeing these signs that this was the way this was ultimately going to end, details TBD. So how did our generals and everybody screw this up so badly? I mean, if people have been saying this nation building project wasn't going to work out for this long, Americans were losing interest in, working on this project on both sides of the aisle. Trump and Biden are pointing fingers. Where did this go wrong? Was this outcome inevitable to end like this, or is this the worst of all possible ways it could end?
I would say this is one of the worst of all possible. In 2006, I'd been in Iraq since late 2004. Mm-hmm. I decided to take a break from that heavy combat and went over to Afghanistan to see a war that I thought that we won, because that's what all the reports were saying. And so I ran around there for a while alone without military forces and interviewed just tons of people, including British and American military, but mostly Afghans and contractors and that sort of thing. And I came to the very quick realization that we were losing that war. And I published 12 major dispatches in 2006, which you can find online, saying that this is really going poorly in Afghanistan. And those were met with real sharp rebuke, actually. I then went back to Iraq, and then in 2007 reported that we were turning that war around, which we did, which was also met with sharp rebuke. But then we did turn the war around, actually, and then we left early there as well. That was not Obama's fault strictly by leaving Iraq anyway. There was multiple layers of screw up there, including the Iraqis. But the bottom line is we fought the same war over and over. In that beginning war, in the very beginning, when we had special operations forces and just a few elements go in there and really spank the Taliban, we can hurt them badly without much boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. We can do severe damage to them right now without much boots on the ground. I mean, we can spank them hard, and there's not a lot they can do about it when we're coming at them with cruise missiles and from the air and that sort of thing, drones. We can make them hurt. So, but we got to be willing to do it, and we've got to be willing to fight them in a way that they recognize. For instance, they're going to be back in their villages. We have to be willing to bomb them in their villages. If you don't want to be bombed, then if you don't want your village to be bombed, Taliban, don't go back to your own village. But the bottom line is we don't have the will to do that, or some of us do, but others don't. The Taliban do. The Taliban have the will to do it. You hear these generals constantly saying we're turning the corner, right? Mm-hmm. We're always turning a corner when we're going in circles. If you're going in circles, you're turning the corner every step you take, right? And we were doing the same, turning the same. Every new leadership that came in Afghanistan would say, we're turning the corner. You can go back and just see how many times people say we're turning the corner. And they would just come in and they would say, oh, the last general, the last units, they didn't know what they're doing. Here we are. We know what we're doing. We're smarter. And then they would do the same stuff. Because I would be with that unit that left and the unit that came and the unit that came next, right? Mm-hmm. And they would all say, oh, that unit didn't know what they were doing, and watch us be heroes, right? And then they would do the same stuff. And so, or it might have a little different, but the bottom line, in aggregate, this is what we got. This is what I've predicted in writing hundreds of times, and probably 1,000 interviews online, Fox, wherever. I've been telling people for years that this is what we're going to end up with, and here we go.
So, but how could Biden have been listening to generals who were telling him this was going to be some orderly withdrawal where we'd be able to keep people safe and the Afghan National Army is well equipped and well trained and things were going to go? I mean, who was telling him this? Who believed that?
Well, he may have gotten it from White Rage Milley. I don't know. Mr. General White Rage Milley. He's an idiot. The guy's a complete idiot. General Petraeus told me several times this week. He told me over the last several months it's going to collapse. It's going to go crazy. And it has. Of course, he's retired now. But, and I knew it too. I got sources on the ground. I was all over Afghanistan. And it was very obvious what was going to happen. The details obviously are not obvious. You can not predict the details. But the general form that it would be, the Taliban would inherit in Afghanistan, the area known as Afghanistan. Basically, Afghanistan is an area that's not something else. Afghanistan is not Pakistan. Afghanistan is not Iran or Tajikistan, Uzbekistan or Turkmenistan, right? It's not China that has that little border up there. So it's that area that's not something else. It's a lot of groups that wish to have their own Pashtunistan. The Pashtuns want the Baluchs want Baluchistan. Hazars want Hazaristan. It's the same story.
So what happened? So tonight, when in a few hours, let's say hypothetically, if they rush into Kabul and take, of course, they'll take everybody prisoners, they'll own everybody, but have a whole bunch of American prisoners. Are they canny enough to, try to shake the Americans down for money, or will they go in and just slaughter people? Is it a mob mentality? Is there a leadership structure in the Taliban? Or are these just monsters?
I mean, they have leaders, but they're very cellular. I mean, they have tribal structures, then they have local structures, they have ethnic structures. I mean, so it's a layered cake, right? It's not easy to understand. It's not easy to understand even for analysts but the bottom line is the basic structures will tend to be local, right? And so, but right now everybody's rushing for Kabul. It's the big Mardi Gras of death basically is unfolding, is what it comes down to. And one of my friends, Afghan, his family just rushed in from Herat, said there was bodies all over the road, burned out vehicles, that sort of thing. That was coming in from Herat. That's on the Iran side. And now there are American citizens that I know of, that I personally know of, who are in Kabul, and they're trapped because the American embassy, from what I'm told some hours ago, the American citizens are gone from the American embassy, if that report is accurate, and that source has been very accurate over time. So let's see but the bottom line is there's tons of Americans still there, and the support elements, it's going to be a bloodbath. I mean, I don't see any way around it. And unless the United States is willing to come in and really put pain, if I were in charge, I would go weapons free on Taliban. I would say, listen, you're going to lay off Kabul, or we're going to start flattening your villages where you're from. We know where they're at. We're going to start dropping fuel air bombs on your villages, right? I mean, seriously, you want to play big boy rules? You can take it up in The Hague. But the bottom line is they're going to do a mass slaughter in Kabul, and they're not going to face any consequences because we're afraid to go like Dracula on them, right? The fact is, we have created Geneva Conventions that suit an enemy like this. They can run around us because culturally we won't fight them on their cultural level. We won't fight them at the root. The root is their village and their whole structural level back there. As long as they know that we have to get them alone, away from children, they'll just always carry children with them. That's what they do. I've seen it myself many, many times. It's just unbelievable. So like right now, when I'm down in the Darien Gap, I just got out of the jungle. They're carrying huge numbers of children down here in Panama through the Columbia, because they know that as soon as they show up with children at the United States border in Mexico, that they're going to get right in. So they're just using children as bait. They're using children as shields. It's unbelievable. It's sickening savagery.
Wow.
But that's what we're faced with. War, you got to keep in mind, war is per se savage. There's no way around it. There's no pretty way to do war. There's no nice way to do war. There's no legal way to do war except in your mind, right? And right now, the Taliban, at this point, they're going to inherit Afghanistan. The only thing that we can stop them doing at this point is from doing a mass slaughter at the airport and in Kabul of our people. How are we going to do that? I would go full Dracula on them. Like I said, I would be out there with B-52s and everything else. It's like, you can come to Kabul, but if I were you, I would go back to your village. Because if you're in Kabul, we're going to flatten your village.
God,
right?
I hope they're listening to somebody like you.
Bottom line.
I hope they're listening to you and not Mark Milley, who's worried about equities over there.
Yeah, Mark Milley's stomping around doing his white rage. He's an idiot. I mean, this is the kind of leadership we've got. Austin, Secretary of Defense, he's another idiot. He was never a bright general. He's not a bright Secretary of Defense. They're just racist out thinking about racism stuff while we got a big war in our hands. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Michael, you're talking
out of
to
the
people,
more than 80 countries I've been to.
So you're talking to
What's
people.
that?
You said you're talking to people in Kabul today. Americans trapped. What are you advising them to do?
Right now, let me see. Let me see what's coming in right now since we've been talking. Let's see here. Nothing's come in since we've been talking. But
that's
people
ominous.
are making a run for the. People are making a run for the airport, and flights are having difficulty getting in and getting out. My alarm is going off. Sorry about that. Are you there?
Yeah, we're there.
Okay.
Alice, you can give. Michael's going to wrap up anyway, so you give him your last question.
Yeah. No, I just, what is the Taliban thinking here in terms of like what the Biden administration is doing? Biden hasn't appeared yet today. It's now early afternoon in the U.S. We haven't seen Biden. He just gave his statement, I guess, last night or this morning about how, this was actually Trump's fault because it was his deal. And they've been issuing some strongly worded tweets about how, the Taliban, we're going to work better with you in the future if you don't commit war crimes now. I mean, like, are they just laughing at us right now?
He's an idiot. They know the United States word means nothing to them. Zero. Our word means as much to them as theirs to us. It's two groups that are negotiating. The Taliban aren't negotiating with us. They do talk, fight, just like the communists do. They'll say, hey, yeah, we're going to pretend that we're negotiating, and if that buys us 5 minutes, that's fine. If it buys us 5 hours, that's even better. I mean, the Taliban, if they see an opening, they're going to take it, period. If they, I know that we were sending more Marines and some artillery in yesterday or so, but, the fact is I've been at that airport when it gets rocketed. When we had far more forces and far more ability to fight back, we were getting rocketed there all the time. They're going to start rocketing the hell out of that place. I know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be a bloodbath. And Biden, he doesn't even know what's going on. The guy's lost his mind. Let's just talk about it like the way it really is. Yeah. The guy is gone. And Kamala Harris is an idiot. Austin, the Secretary of Defense, he's all running around talking about racism and CRT and all these things. And Miley is incompetent. We've got an entire upper chain of command that is incompetent. It's time to pull. Listen, I was just all over the United States, Atlanta, Washington. I was at Washington, D.C. I was there at the Capitol attack. I was there for the inauguration. I was up in, Philadelphia and Portland covering Antifa and BLM. The United States has got problems. We don't have time for this. The problem is the United States has cancer at this point. The problems that we have at home, the border. I'm down here in Panama right now covering what's coming to you right now. You're not going to believe what's coming. It's increasing dramatically. We've got bigger things to think about. We got to get our people out of Afghanistan. We've already screwed that one up. That house is burning down, period. Now we got to worry about our own house. And, we got to get our people out of Afghanistan, and we've got to shut our southern border. And this pandemic is a distraction. It's clearly a real pandemic. It's a massive distraction from our own invasion that's happening across our southern border. We got about 20,000 people coming through this month just in Panama. We got more than 200,000 coming across the southern border in the United States, and I assure you that number is increasing. So, I mean, the United States has much bigger problems on our plate than Afghanistan. We just got to get our people out, and we've got to get our house in order, and we've got a clean house in Washington because we haven't cleaned the swamp, and it's just destroying our country.
All right, Michael. His name is Michael Yon. Follow him on Twitter at Michael_Yon, Y-O-N. Check out michaelyon-online.com, and he's got a locals too. Check out his locals and to subscribe to him. And he is the best journalist that we have out there. Certainly the best correspondent. And thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Anytime. I'm sorry I was late today. There's a lot going on with the Afghan thing.
Just a little.
We'll blame it on the Taliban. I think this one's not on you, Michael. Take care, man. I appreciate it.
You can see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. So there he is. That is Michael Yon. Once again, if you want to follow him, we'll put everything, all that stuff in the show notes. And the fact that he says it's going to be a bloodbath to me means to me that it's going to be a bloodbath. He's not a mince words kind of guy. And this is what his value has always been, is telling people in a raw manner the facts on the ground. And I mean, what do we do? What do we do if even by tonight, tomorrow, or a few days into this week, American hostages are being killed on tape? Because the Taliban will say, okay, yeah, we'll take your, $500 million to...
Well, I hope we send them a strongly worded letter about war crimes and how...
Well, Jen Psaki will tell them they're going to lose their place in the international community.
Oh.
Well, it's the thing is, right, they don't care about this. If you've read about the Taliban previously. I've spent unfortunate time reading about what they did at a zoo when they got there to the animals. That should be enough to push the left into caring about this. But
well, the women's rights thing is an angle. Marianne Williamson was tweeting that she's not normally for sticking around in wars, but just because of the women's rights situation, she's concerned about the situation in Afghanistan. So Marianne Williamson is for a stronger presence in Afghanistan, I guess, as she tweeted today.
That's great. So who knows what'll happen there? I mean, it could there's these guys are these people, these Taliban are animals. You're not to consider them anything but. They're horrific. And so what happens when that happens? What will the administration do?
I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Are they just going to continue to blame Donald Trump for making the plan? Which, by the way, it was also bad when Trump invited the Taliban to Camp David to talk to them, too.
Yes.
That was also stupid.
Absolutely. These people are monsters. These are not human beings. The Taliban are not human beings. They are monsters. And they should be treated as
so, yeah, but I can tell you, I don't think just because of Trump's obsession with how things look and how they reflect on him, I don't think Trump would have allowed this to go down this way.
No. Especially since it
even
looks
if he
weak.
made the plan, I don't think he would have allowed this to happen in the way that it did.
I totally agree. Because it not only, among other things, it looks weak. He doesn't want anything to do that. So let's talk about what we were hearing and how we got here a little bit. A long time ago, a time that I'll call Friday, John Kirby of the State Department said this.
Now, without getting into a battlefield assessment every day, I don't want to do that. But Kabul is not right now in an imminent threat environment.
There you go. So either he knew it was and lied, or didn't know it was, and we have no effing idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I would say a combination of both, probably. But, I mean, I think, and we talked to Michael Yon about this, as you heard, but I thought his assessment that these people are all just idiots is probably closer to the truth than that they're, like, in some nefarious scheme. I think they're incompetents, and I think that they didn't know that this was going to happen like this.
That's remarkable. But also, there's part of, if you have Mark Milley, Michael Yon talked about this, you have Mark Milley saying, oh, I want to start a white rage. That is either one, that he's a true believer in this nonsense from a year and a half ago that we've all been making pretend about, or he actually is it's just about self-preservation. And you say what you want to the civilian leadership that keeps you preserved for a bigger gig and then a bigger gig and a bigger gig. And, I mean, maybe that's exactly what we're seeing here that has happened. But it is freaking worrisome that these people are clueless. Blinken,
well, what's China thinking watching this right now as they think about whether or not to invade Taiwan? I mean, they're looking at our military commitments and how well we're dealing with them right now and thinking, like, wow, these guys are a bunch of chumps. Like, we'll just go for it. What are they going to do about it if we invade Taiwan?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think for China and Russia, and Russia's not a threat of invasion or anything, but
well,
for other
some
countries,
people,
but
some of our allies, they are.
Think how excited you've got to be if you're Iran right now. First of all, you got escaping Afghan soldiers running with our equipment into Iran. All of that stuff now belongs to Iran. This happened during the Iraq War as well. All the stuff belongs to Iran. They've got to be thrilled. Not only that, but this gives Iran another chance, an opportunity to make trouble. And there's going to be another opportunity for either alliances or to triangulate in order to push around other foes in the area. And these Iranians, these fundamentals are there's no limit to what they'll do. We've already been fighting Iran in a war for 20 years. This is a win for everybody else. A win for everybody else. And I understand that a lot of you who said, you don't want forever wars and et cetera, et cetera. This wasn't really a forever war last year at this time.
But I've heard experts point out too that the reason it was as low key as it was over the last year or so was because of the Trump's agreement to do an impending drawdown, that it wasn't going to, if we had stayed, it wouldn't have stayed that low cost in terms of lives and blood and treasure, that it was keeping this as stable as it was going to require more than the 2,500 troops that we had there,
Was it? It's been pretty good for a few years, Allison. I think it predates last year. I mean,
I don't know. I'm just repeating what I've seen other people say about it.
Like
that
Michael
this was
Yon
not.
said,
we were going to have to either at some point here escalate or come out, and it's just not clear to me that this was the process by which we had to leave the country.
Well, the process was screwed up completely. But I'm sorry, I'm into the educating some people how to be Western, and we've Westernized some folks, and we made a promise.
Yeah, but you heard Michael Yon say it there. This was a 100-year project. This isn't us occupying Germany that, had cities and stuff before we got there. And a whole
I understand,
world
but there are some folks who were a part of the university, which was partly funded by Stanford, which was run by a couple of international units as well, which was going quite well until, of course, it was blown up by the Taliban, but which was making a comeback anyway. And I understand that's nation building, and fine. Maybe the better idea would have been to just extract them over, bring them over here, and whatever. And I agree, but there's a wrong way to do this, and this is absolutely the wrong way. So now you've done this where you've retreated too early when the Taliban's on the move during fighting season, so they're able to capitalize on that. They're already in motion, take a storm through the country, and now we're stuck not having enough support to extract our people over. So now we've added thousands more, and now who knows what condition they're in.
Right.
And who knows what we're willing to do. I don't know.
So it's not going to be clear. I mean, and this could be outdated by the time we post it. I don't know. But, the U.S. is going to have to make some decisions here about what we do about the remaining people that are there. If we just sit here and watch them get executed.
The
or
Taliban are such monsters, Alice. I would love, my dream is this. Biden, I was sent a Microsoft access code. Do you know where that would have been?
No, I don't. It wasn't me.
My dream is this, is that we're reading, although it's too late now, it could have been done a little while ago, is that the Taliban are such awful people, is that I would like them just to all be dead. It'd be wonderful. And then somebody could say Biden's got blood in his hands. He killed 180,000 Taliban. And that's fine. Who cares?
Well, yeah, I'd rather be having the debates like we have the debates now about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Was it the right thing? Was it? And not be having, continuing to be in a drawn-out war in Japan in the Pacific Theater for years and years and years after that. It would be, at least that ended it, right?
Of course.
That was the ultimate, sorry, that's done. Actually, we're pretty close to the anniversary of that, too, right now. That was right around this time of year also. But that was the end of it. That was the end of World War II.
Was August 6th,
and, people love to sit around and debate, was it worth it, and how terrible those bombs were, and the whole thing, and how we experimented on other people, et cetera, et cetera. We also pretty viciously bombed some German cities, too, I would say.
Oh, yeah, killed more than Hiroshima.
But that's a debate that we now have the luxury to have because we did that and we weren't drawn into a war for years and years afterwards. Now we've been in Afghanistan for 20 years and still nobody has bothered to put an end to the war in a way that actually makes sense.
Right. No, and that was a different situation, even though after September 11th, 2001, I was all for just nuking any country in the Middle East. And
yeah, but I think there's a difference between the way, and when we saw Trump in office handle military conflicts, he very much had this philosophy of shoot the big missiles at the bad guys, don't make Americans go fight them and die over this, but if they're going to do something that we don't like, then we're going to shoot a bunch of missiles at them and make them pay for it and then go away, but make sure that they know that they're going to be in a world of hurt if they mess with us, which the Taliban knows now they're not going to be.
Right. And here's Jake Tapper taking it to Secretary Blinken saying, hey, does your word mean anything?
Look, you told me a few months ago on this program that you thought it was entirely likely that the Taliban would be taking over the country. But President Biden, just last month, quote, the likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. He was wrong.
Jake, what we've done, what the president has done, is make sure that we were able to adjust to anything happening on the ground. And the fact that he sent...
This ain't good when he's making zero admission, but instead suggesting that they did the right thing and they're on top of this. That's not good. That tells you that either the reality is distorted for those folks or the communications staff runs the administration or somebody insane.
The fact that the White House is tweeting that President Biden's being briefed on the drawdown of civilian personnel. The drawdown of civilian personnel as people flee to the airport under fire from the Taliban. Are you kidding me?
Or are stuck.
Additional forces in. We had those forces at the ready, fully prepared to go in the event that this moved in a direction where we needed forces in place to ensure that our personnel was safe and secure, to ensure also that we could do everything possible to bring out of Afghanistan those Afghans most at risk. That's exactly what we're doing.
Why didn't you have the troops in there and then let that happen first before taking them out?
Again, I come back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is that status quo was not sustainable.
How bureau speak is that?
You don't have to sustain it forever.
No, but just listen to the words. That status quo was not sustainable. That's bureaucratic speak. That's wishy-washy horse shit that only bureaucrats use.
Yeah, but I mean, I also disagree with the premise. The status quo is not sustainable. I mean, that's essentially what I said a few minutes ago, too, is that, like, we weren't going to be able to maintain this low presence forever without going in one direction or the other. But the point is, they've known about the fact that they were planning to leave the country for a while now. The time to get all the interpreters out and the SIVs and the other people that we need to work with. There's some kind of special thing they're doing for journalists who worked with Western outlets, trying to get them to come, but there's a lot of paperwork involved. The time to do this was before we took all the troops out.
Right.
I mean, that seems obvious. Jake Tapper is not, like, a military strategist. I'm not a military strategist, and, I know that much. That you don't...
the time to do this is before, one, either the Taliban can come in and kill them all, or two, the Taliban can come in and take them all and then ransom them back to us, which, of course, this administration would gladly pay.
Well, I was seeing some totally unsubstantiated, so take it with a grain of salt, rumors on Twitter that the United States has in some form been promising the Taliban money to hold off so that we could get people out to give us more time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like it or not, there was an agreement that the forces would come out on May 1st. Had they not...
In other words, it's Trump's fault. There was an agreement. Did the Taliban stand by that agreement?
No.
No.
So we didn't have to either. And not like Biden didn't tear up every other thing Trump ever did.
Yes, there was a Keystone Pipeline agreement, I remember as well.
Had we not begun that process, which is what the president did, and the Taliban saw, then we would have been back at war with the Taliban.
So we did a good job, he's saying. Yay! Remarkable how dangerous these guys are. Here's the same idiot talking on July 4th.
I don't think that the fact that our forces are withdrawing, one, we're not withdrawing, we're staying. The embassy is staying, our programs are staying. We're working to make sure that other partners stay. We're building all of that up. And whatever happens in Afghanistan, if there is a significant deterioration in security, that could well happen. We've discussed this before. I don't think it's going to be something that happens from a Friday to a Monday.
No, just Friday to Sunday.
Right.
No, it's incredible. And the contention that, like, if we take the troops out, we're no longer at war with the Taliban is just so astonishing to me. Like, you're going to leave the civilian population, the Americans and the Afghans who worked with us, and you're just going to leave them there where the Taliban can kill them. Mm-hmm. And the people with the guns are going to walk away and fly back to America. And then you're going to say, see, we're no longer at war with the Taliban. Well, guess what? A war is based on two people wanting to kill each other. And the Taliban is still at war with us. So you can't leave the civilian population there that is vulnerable to this and just walk away from them. You have to get out the people who want to leave first, you know? Thank you so much, everybody. People who are Patreon subscribers can join us on the other side for an additional little segment on Patreon. That's patreon.com/burnbarrel. We're also on Twitter @burnbarrelpod. You can follow @Tom Shattuck, @Alice Shattuck. You can also follow our guest today at Michael_Yon, that reporter that we spoke to about the situation in Afghanistan. But thank you so much, everybody, and have a great week.